Is there anything else that is kind of very Brage with the way he sets up his bike?
Brakes for sure.
Yeah.
The brakes are really specific. Just like we do not ride our brakes the same way at all. So because he's a lot of muscle, and when he he pulls brake, he puts a lot of power on them. So his brake levers are usually really far away from the bar and have zero modulation. So if you just touch that thing, it locks the brake up.
Velkommen til episode 49 av OTBpodden. Norges eneste sykkelpodcast med fokus på ekte stisykling. Ikke noe grusbanking her. Med generøse dryss av enduro, downhill, dekknerding og geometrikrangling. Til stedet som vanlig, klar for å rette meg på for faktafeil og språkfeil og alt mulig. Vidar Belen som Folden, heter det. Skål! Ja. Hvordan går det, Vidar?
Nei, alt vel egentlig. Det er høstvær og sånn, så det er litt roligere på sykkelfronten, men ellers bra.
Ja, jeg har hatt en solid runde med korona.
Du har det ganske ofte før, eller?
Ja, men jeg mente at jeg hadde hatt korona før, men jeg skal nevne at jeg hadde ikke testet positivt, men det var liksom mange rundt meg som hadde hatt det, og så ble jeg syk rett etterpå, eller rett før et eller annet sånt. Og så i tillegg så folk jeg traff, så ble jeg smittet. Så da var jeg bare skråsikker på at jeg hadde hatt korona. Men etter den runden jeg har hatt nå, så jeg tror ikke jeg har hatt korona. Men nå har jeg hatt det, for de strekene de kom etter 30 sekunder, det var jo som tegnet med 2 tusjer på testen. Men herregud, altså jeg lå jo helt flat ut. Og ja, jeg begynner å komme med til ekte nå, men det blir ikke noe sykling på meg på i hvert fall en uke til 10 dager til, tenker jeg.
Hvordan er hodet da? Jeg ble veldig sliten.
Ja, veldig sliten, og jeg sleit veldig med at det var så forferdelig svimmel, rett og slett. Det var veldig ekkelt, rett og slett. Sånn, stå opp for å gå på do og sånn, jeg måtte liksom holde meg fast i ting, for at det var ja, hele rommet spant, og det hadde litt fortsatt, men det gir seg, så det er bra. Men ja, jeg bare holdt meg hjem og binge Netflix.
Ja, du er ganske flink på å få med deg serier.
Ja. Så nå
er det så gærent ikke er godt for noe.
Jeg har sett, jeg har sett absolutt alle videoepisoder, også videobloggene episodene til han Sam Pilgrim.
Yes.
Og det er ikke få han har laget.
Nei, det er mye faktisk.
Ja, det er nok noen 100. Så ja, nei, han er rå. Ja, men nei, det var egentlig, jeg følte det var en sånn siste fuck you fra 2022. For at det er jo mye annet som ikke er helt godt etter planen i år. Men jeg skal ikke klage for mye da. Men det som er veldig fint, at når man ligger i sykesengen, så får man veldig god tid til å bestemme seg og bestille en ny sykkel.
Ja, det er som sagt, det er aldri så gærent ikke er godt for noe.
Nei, ikke sant? Og det ble, sånn som vi snakket om i forrige podcast, det ble Deviate Claymore large, mørk grønn med EXT bakdemper.
Nice. EXT, det er litt sånn fancy.
Ja, så den kommer i januar, så vi kommer litt tilbake til det, men nå, sånn som vi sa sist da, at nå driver jeg og vurderer hvor mange av de delene jeg har i boden skal selges. Jeg skulle selge gaffelen og la den ut på film, men nå skal jeg, tror jeg ombestemt meg.
Ja, jeg må aldri selge.
Nei. Så ja, jeg vurderte å gå over til Zeb også, men jeg vet ikke. Men det kan hende at det er en gjest vi får om litt som kan hjelpe meg med å bestemme litt sånne ting, men før vi går videre med dagens gjest, så har det vært litt sånn ja, det er ikke sånn sykt mange sånne, som er sponset her i Norge, sånn, hvis vi tenker sånn enduro og syklister og sånne ting. Det er mange ambassadører og sånn, men også Annette Bassnes og Håvard Mageli, som har vært gjest her, de er ferdig som Ibis-ambassadører.
Ja, det var en del år der. Så.
Ja, de var der lenge.
Men har du hørt hva som er next?
Jeg tror kanskje de har fått VPG, men jeg vet ikke. Jeg vet ikke om noen har sagt det, og det offisielt, eller om jeg har hørt rykte, men ingen vil si det eller ut høyt. Eller, ja.
Nei, da vet vi ikke. Jeg vet det i hvert fall.
Nei. Og det krever research, så jeg kunne egentlig bare sendt en melding til de og spurt.
Ja, men hvis de har sagt det, så er det kanskje en grunn til at det ikke er.
Ja, kan godt, jeg føler at de ville gått ut offentlig. Jeg har ikke sett noe i det.
Hvis jeg er ambassadør og ikke sier det til noen, da er det ikke ambassadør.
Men så Anette spesielt har jo hatt en sånn sinnssykt bra sesong i år, så de som klarer å kuppe henne, ja.
Hun var på podden vår, og så plutselig så vant hun alt etter. Ja, jeg ser en samling.
Det noe i det.
Jeg ser en samling.
Ja. Og så han også en som har vært på podcast, Are Tallaksrud. Han ferdig som ambassadør for Speed Products.
Ja, for Santa Cruz.
Ja. Og han har fått seg en Forestall-sykkel.
Ja, som du testet nettopp.
Som jeg testet.
Det var en liten vittig samling.
Ja, ingen samling. Vi testet. Han hopper over.
Ja, ikke sant?
Det ikke noe, det er litt,
leder veldig.
Det ikke for mange tilfeldigheter her, altså.
Nei.
Ja. Men også André og Mott. André. Han ferdig med plan A å sykle og Yeti. Og så han har flyttet til VPG og Rocky Mountain.
Right.
Og han fikk faktisk nylig førsteplass på Oslo Trail Cruise Downhill ritt på Tryvann. Veldig sånn...
det Oslo Trail Cruise heter? Heter ikke Oslo... Nei, jeg husker ikke. Ja.
Tror jeg heter.
Det de som driver på Frognerseter?
Ja, de driver på Frognerseter Freeride Crew. Et eller annet. Veldig sånn low-key event. Og de bruker sånn papptallerken som skilt på styret. Sånn. Så det
veldig
kult. I hvert fall det norske, det det jeg har fått med meg. Nå har jeg scrollet gjennom Facebook og Instagram i sykesengen. Er det noen flere du har fått med deg videre?
Nei, det jo sikkert mye, men ikke jeg vet.
Ja. Nei, men da hopper vi bare rett over til dagens gjest, som sitter her allerede. Late som han ikke her. Hvordan engelsken din ved deg?
Den jo helt grei. Det eneste som dårlig på, for jeg må jo snakke engelsk i jobben noen ganger, og det vanskelig når jeg skal tenke hardt og snakke samtidig, så lider grammatikken fryktelig.
Ja, mitt problem når jeg har nordmenn til stede, og jeg snakker engelsk, så snakker jeg sånn norsk-engelsk.
Ja.
Det liksom, ja, så...
Men han har jo gjesten for å forstå.
Ja, han
norsk og snakke engelsk, så det går jo bra.
Nei, altså, dagens gjest, han beskrevet som legendary mechanic av Nico Vink. Han kan ta service på en Fox 40 med kun 2 zip-ties og en øl i tennene. Visstnok. Han suspension, eller demper-guru, suspension wizard, og han kan balansere bakdempen med kun hendene opp til 400 PSI, visstnok også. Men altså, jeg har en sånn lite klipp her jeg har lyst til å spille av før han får lov å snakke. Du må bare stille litt lenger.
Yeah, man, Gavin's a legendary mechanic, man. A couple of years ago, when I was building Loose Fist, I finished a whole build. I've been testing, jumps were running good. We got it dialed. But then, Gavin came by and I'm like, hey man, do you think you can check my bike maybe? Before my buddies show up and we were having the event. Just make sure everything's safe, etc., So, he did. He looked after my bike, fixed everything, got my bike back the same day, went riding the next day, and we were shooting every single jump in the park. So, that resulted in me having to move the event a couple of weeks later and reshaping the whole park and the whole big line. A bunch of extra expenses, but definitely Gavin makes your bike go fast, man.
Velkommen. Welcome to OTB podcast, Gavin Steder.
Thank you for having me.
How's it going?
Good, and yourself?
Yeah, not too bad. I'm so happy. I've actually been really looking forward to this because I get to speak English. So I've kind of like last week I've been a bit kind of ooh.
So on a side note, this is exactly why I don't speak better Norwegian.
Because people
are excited to speak English, finally use what they learned in school. Try it out a little bit.
Yeah, I only get to speak English like basically when I phone my mum. And then I don't really talk very much because my mum is the only one who does the talking. So I phone her up and I say, "Hi, mum, how's it going?" And then she talks about an hour and 40 minutes about the neighbour's cat and everything. And then I say goodbye and that's that. So
that's a couple English words though.
I met his mom and I can confirm.
She speaks a lot, man.
She sounds like a wonderful lady.
Yeah.
She's good. She's good. Yeah. So is what Nico Vink, what we just heard him say on the video just now, is that true?
I feel like the hype was kind of strong with that video. Having friends like Martin and Nico, and I don't want to build too much expectations. So
cool. But give us for those who don't know who you are, who the hell is Gavin? I mean, give us a bit about your background. Like, how did just tell about how did mountain biking start for you? What's your bike history?
Yeah, so, originally I'm from Salt Lake City, Utah. My dad is Norwegian, which is how I ended up here. Okay. But basically, when I was in university, so I started mountain biking fairly late. I was around like 20, 21 years old. And I was living with some of my friends out of high school. And basically, they all bought mountain bikes. So if I wanted to see or hang out with my friends again, I had to buy a bike as well.
Good group pressure. Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely good group pressure. And then so went riding with them, and then became just fully obsessed. So, and
nice.
Yeah, up until that point, it was fixed gears and bike messaging, and so I was fairly into bikes already, but not mountain bikes necessarily.
You were a bike messenger?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, that's quite hard. Like on the body.
Yeah, so I got hit by a car once to get my. Just earned the badge for that one. So
to gain respect from your peers.
Yeah, for sure. And then pick mountain bike up after.
Yeah, because that was obviously like way before the era of electric bikes and everything. So it was like,
oh yeah, and especially in the US as well. Electric bikes were so far behind in Europe when I was, because I worked at shops there, or worked at one shop when I was in the US for 5 years. And like we heard about all the e-bikes coming out in Europe, but we didn't hear, like there was nothing in the shop when I was working there. So they didn't come till much later. So yeah, just.
And did you have like the handlebars that were like really, really cut down? So they're like sort of 400 millimeters wide or something? Or
they weren't the narrowest, but I did ride brakeless fixie.
Oh,
really?
You can keep it. Yeah.
Man, you were like hipster before it was a thing.
Yeah, I feel like that's a really hip. It definitely was a thing. It was a thing then for sure.
Ah, cool. Because I remember like the very short period of time I lived in London during the 90s. The couriers there, it was like they had the bars cut down so much, and then like basically on one side they had it was back brake only. There wasn't fixie or anything. It was back brake only, and they had basically gear shifter on one side. And then they had enough handlebar for a grip and a brake on the other side, and that was it. So the bars were like maybe a centimeter or two wider than their hands.
To get between cars.
Basically to get between the cars. So like, and these guys were nuts. They would like, if you're driving in London, they would just like ride between the cars doing like 30, 40, 50 or whatever. Kilometers an hour, and just not give a shit, and nobody wore a helmet or anything,
Yeah, we were a bit safer than that, and also like knuckle wide bars were never a thing for us. Like if you can't fit your shoulders between a car, then there's no reason to have your bars any thinner than that.
Yeah, but that's because like all the Americans are driving these big SUVs that are like bricks, whereas we had like little sedan cars.
Oh, for sure. And traffic in London is way more hectic than downtown Salt Lake. Our cars will go a bit faster downtown, so if you do get hit by one, it's probably a bit more consequence. But for the most part, less crammed.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So after that, how do you? Your mountain biking, whatever you have.
Yeah, so I don't really have a chill when I get into something. I just go 110% into it. So as soon as I found mountain bikes, I was like, hell yeah, this is for me. I went and picked up I went to the local bike shop like every week for 2 months until they gave me a job. So I was definitely that really annoying person that keeps showing up constantly.
It worked though.
It worked, yeah, for sure. But yeah, I got a job, got my first mountain bike from there, and then yeah, just kind of spent all my time. So I did my did my bachelor's in the U.S.
Oh.
I worked in the bike shop basically throughout most of it. And then after finishing bachelor's, wanted to try something new and ride a bike in a new place. And since my dad lived in Norway and I had dual citizenship, then yeah, figured might as well see what happens and moved here.
Ah. What was it? Do you remember what your first bike was? Yeah.
My first bike, my first bike as a kid, I had a Diamondback rigid mountain bike, but I wasn't really into mountain biking at that point. That was just like the neighborhood bike. And then my first, so when I graduated high school, I was going to move out of my mom's house. And so for my graduation present, she bought me like this $100 Walmart bike. It was the Mongoose full suspension. And that's the one I had when all my friends started riding mountain bikes. And that thing was the biggest piece of shit in the entire world. Like I got so fed up with this bike. I was like, you know what? This thing is completely useless. I'm just going to put it outside a bar with a free sign and it's going to get somebody home safe tonight. At least it does like one good thing. Yeah. in its life. And sure enough, it wasn't there in the morning. So like it served its purpose, but.
So it's not even a pub bike. It's a get home drunk bike.
It's a get home drunk bike. And like, yeah, whatever. That thing, it was probably more dangerous to ride that bike home than walk it. But my first actual mountain bike was a Trek Ticket dirt jumper.
Okay, cool.
And then from there, I bought the Slash in 2012 Enduro bike when it first came out.
See, you're like ahead of everything because you start off early with fixies, and then you start off with like fairly early with a dirt jumper. Whereas like a lot of people, they have like full suspension bikes, and then they go to a dirt jumper because they realise they're shit at jumping, and then they usually over 40 have the cash to buy a dirt jumper and think that they can buy their way into being able to do dirt jumping.
And then you have to realize you still have to learn how to jump.
Yeah, and
because
you also,
it's much worse on a dirt jumper.
Yeah, and when you realize you can't dirt jump, you also realize that you can't manual.
I'm not going to say like my entry into mountain biking was graceful though. Like I have no talent at all for biking, which is probably why I became so obsessed with it because progress was so easy. Like when you have no skill, everything feels like a success.
It's great to start new activities because you like go accelerate really fast.
For sure. And luckily in Salt Lake they still have it, like a really good local. Now it's a bike park, but back then it was just like unofficial dirt jump park where you could take your big bike and hit jumps or have a dirt jumper or BMX or whatever. And so we had access to that. So I just go ride that before work in mornings on my dirt jumper and just chill. So we had like the facilities to actually have a dirt jumper.
Cool.
Or in Oslo, it's like Hegedal for pump track. Like, there's not such a good entry-level access into that kind of stuff here.
You don't travel that far that often. Sort of.
No.
But that means you got, a pretty solid skill set very early, starting off doing dirt jumps. Because that's like, this sort of skills-wise, it's actually a really good place to start is to, learn how the bike reacts in a transition, how it reacts in the air, how you can balance your body and control it and where you should be, and also bunny hopping and stuff like that as well.
For sure. But also those bikes are really unforgiving when you start out. So yeah, it wasn't graceful, but you also learn how to crash really well.
Ah, cool.
Not that it looks like I know how to crash very well. I guess we'll get to that part later.
You know how to find the crash.
Yeah. I know how to make an exit, that's for sure.
So you moved to Norway and when was that?
So that was 2015.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So after finishing the bachelor's, I only had like a couple of years left on my passport. And if I didn't move here, I would have lost the citizenship. So it was either move then or never. And just, worst case, you have to move back to Utah. And that didn't seem like such a bad worst case. I really like it there.
Yeah.
So.
And did you start working in a bike shop?
Yeah. So I came out. I came out for a few weeks to see if I could find a job before actually moving to see if it'd be viable. And then Spin my Ustru and pretty much took me on within the first week that I came to visit.
Yeah.
So I came out first season in 2015 and started working at Spin and worked there for a couple of seasons.
Cool. Because the guys at Spin, they're quite a sort of bike loving crew. I get the impression.
Oh, for sure.
It's not because it's quite a big shop, and it's in real sort of prime location in the middle of Oslo. There's not many bike shops that can afford to have that kind of location. A lot of them are out of town or they're net based or whatever, but those guys keep it going. So I did notice, like, for a while I kind of had this sort of animosity towards them because I just kind of looked at the shop front and the way they've got the bikes in the window and that, I mean, they're trying to earn money, and I didn't know anyone who worked there. And I just thought, that's like one of those sort of wanker bike shop places, to put it mildly. I have to just say, I was so wrong, because I've actually been there and I know a few people who work there now. And it's not just because I know the people there, but I've actually been there, and they are actually a really cool bunch of people.
For sure. Yeah, they really are. And I mean, in the general area of town that they're in, I can definitely see where it'd come off as just being another kind of posh, posh bike shop for sure. But yeah, the crew there was super into riding mountain bike. When I came in 2015 though, like, it wasn't the type of mountain bike that I was used to riding. That was the biggest culture shock to me, but they rode all the time. Yeah. So it did force you to get out, and they did just generally love riding their bikes. And a lot of the friends that I made when I first moved here in 2015 are still some of my best friends now.
Cool.
So yeah, I got super lucky with that place. And
is everyone who works at Spin in the bike bums?
Yeah, so the bike bums, not everyone in the bike bums crew has worked at Spin.
Okay, so it's not two ways.
A few of the guys that are the bike bums crew have definitely worked at Spin, and the bike bums crew is definitely heavily influenced by the crew at Spin that was there when I worked there.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
So it was that type of vibe the whole time.
So he's another early guy with a bit of bike bums. I'm just gonna phone you like once a week and say what are you up to at the moment, and then I'm just gonna follow that, and I know that'll be the next thing.
I hope that no.
But so you were at Spin for a while, and then you moved on from there.
Well, so because when I first moved here, I was also doing a master's at the same time. So I was doing a master's in Ås at NMBU while I was working at Spin.
I don't know if you mentioned at the beginning, what were you doing a bachelor and what did you do in master's?
So bachelor, I did environmental and sustainability studies at the University of Utah. And when I moved here, I went to NMBU and did international environmental studies. So I ended up working with Oslo Kommune and working alongside with Nina and those guys on doing like a big mapping project for city planning in Oslo Market.
Right. So city planning, like parks? Or?
No, so we're looking at like development zones for like the border between the city and Oslo Market. Like there's that hard border where you can't build into, and people are always trying to push into the forest and develop those areas. And when I was doing my master's, there was a big development plan on the table for developing those areas for recreation, which was kind of a gray area. So we were looking at mapping.
As long as it's a bike park, it's okay.
I was secretly trying to sneak that in my master's project. Like extra points on bike park. Yes, all good there.
And all city bikes should be dirt bikes.
If anyone watched the Sladding Konkurranse in Sankthanshaugen.
Yeah.
The couple of guys that worked for City Bike did it on that one, so they basically are dirt. Anything's a dirt jumper if you try hard enough.
That's true.
And I found an Instagram account today, and I'll put it in the show notes. I'm pretty sure it's called City Boys or something like that, or City Bikes. I don't know. I'll find it. It's basically a bunch of guys in New York who do street riding with city bikes.
No way.
And they are really, really fucking good as well.
Sick.
Like, yeah, they're not just jumping off little curbs and stuff. I mean, we're talking like proper drops and like 180s and all sorts of crazy
the
stuff.
city must have a whole separate budget for top road wheels after those guys are around.
Yeah, I'll find it. I'll put it in the show notes. It's hysterical. They're worth watching.
But you finished with your master now?
Yeah, so I did. The master was 2 years, so I finished that one.
Yeah.
And then soon after that, I started working at BC.
Yeah. So you weren't tempted to work along your education?
I mean, I was tempted, but also to work in Oslo Kommune, you have to be fluent in Norwegian, which obviously I'm still not, so it wasn't a chance then. And then right after I finished my master's, I got the opportunity to start a workshop with BC. And I mean, I'd been working with bikes for so long that obviously it was a clear passion, and I wasn't going to not turn down an opportunity like that. Oh. So just figured I'd give it a few years, try that out, see if it works out. And then to me, also having a master's, it made the whole bike mechanic thing feel more like a choice, which I think does help in the long run.
Yeah. So then you always have the master in the back pocket.
Well, you think about it, like it's I guess kind of like a false sense of security. Yeah. Because I haven't worked with it for so long that if I actually tried to go back and like use it for anything, it'd probably be a lot harder now than.
You get into it.
Yeah. But luckily the bikes thing is pretty sick, so I think I'll stick with this one.
BC, that's the guys out at Høvik, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Brown couch.
Brown couch. Yeah. I thought they were called British Columbia bikes for ages. And every time I looked up for them on the internet, I didn't find them. But no, James, it's Brown Couch. I'm like, oh, God.
Yeah.
British Columbia is in a different country.
Yeah, but it would sort of make sense because of the bike connection, and I mean, okay, they're in Høvik, so it's not British Columbia.
I wish I was in British Columbia bikes.
I don't know, but maybe they're very cool, Yeah.
I've been to Whistler. It was very, very fun.
Yeah, if I open up a shop in Oslo, I call it Whistler Bike. Why not? Yeah, they did work magic on my Fox 38 that was giving me so much trouble. So you've obviously left some kind of legacy there.
I mean, they're good guys, always have been. And then the mechanic Jeff, who took over for me when I left, like he's such a good guy as well. So I mean, it's still solid. Yeah. And Jeff is a legend in his own right from way before BC. So can't go wrong.
That's cool. And then after BC, was that when you went to Gira sykkel?
Yeah, so I went to Gira.
Cool. With Martin Vinje and I'm terrible with names. What's the name of the other guy?
Mikke
Svensson. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's cool. And how is like from going from spin to BC to Gira? Like, is it a very different kind of vibe in all these different shops, or is it just do you feel like you just same kind of friends, environment, and group, but you're just changing the location in a way? If you know what I mean?
No, there's a few shops in between Spin and BC, but basically there's a totally different vibe. So Spin is the biggest chain I've ever worked for. Like the shop that I worked for in the US, they had been around since 1942, and they're a really small shop and family owned. And it was definitely like you have to work. Like you're there to work, obviously, and work to learn. But everyone there loves riding bikes, and the general vibe's really good. And then Spin's a bit of a chain, so they do have an upper management, which is what pushes things along. And all the guys that work at Spin are obviously super keen on riding bikes and mountain bikes, but the majority of the bikes that come in for service are commuters and that kind of stuff. So it's not a bad thing, but it's just like not as specialist. Whereas when I started because I worked at Star Motor first, and then from Star Motor I actually went to BC. Yeah, right. So I came from like a really suspension heavy, or going from Spin, I wanted to do more specialist work with just mountain bikes and learn suspension and that kind of stuff, and be in an environment where you can learn it. And since there's really no education for it, being at Star Motor was a great, like, you work alongside all the moto mechanics there, and mountain bikes are just basically mini moto. And those guys have been working with moto for so long. Yeah. So it was a great place to learn. So from there to BC and then to Gira, like it's all similar vibes. Like everyone's, not to use the word core because I feel like that excludes people, but no, it's just more interest focused. Like, and both at BC and at Gira, like, of course, if you bring your commuter or your cyclocross or whatever, like we'll happily help you out because we also ride those bikes, but we definitely have our specialties and be a bit more nerdy about that kind of stuff. And
But a lot of business must be in the commuting kind of bikes.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Commuter bikes are still bread and butter. Yeah. That's for sure.
Yeah.
That's what gets worn down day by day.
Oh, for sure. I mean, mountain bikes, also get worn down day by day.
They take a beating. Yes.
But quite often, like, if you're a bit like me, often when you end up in a bike shop, it's because something's broken and you can't fix it yourself, and it's a bit of a crisis, and you're probably,
short on time,
12 hours away from going to Nespin for the weekend or some enduro or something. I mean, is it like every customer that comes in, it's a crisis?
No, it's not every customer, but in season, it's quite a few. So that's also like, if you came into the shop and we ask you like when you're looking to have it done by, it's because we're trying to be flexible with people. Like, if you don't need it tomorrow, the next person probably will. So no, it's not everybody. And also, being riders, like, of course we want you to ride your bike. And we're also in that situation ourselves when our own bike break, and we have to try and fix it after work before we go riding. So we're no different than anybody else. And we can definitely see that perspective. But as long as you just work with us, usually we can make it happen.
Yeah, because I remember it was probably about a couple of years ago, and I phoned up, and it was typical situation. I think I was going to Nespin or something, I don't know, and my rear damper had just, like, the ring had blown out and it wasn't holding pressure and stuff. And then I just explained it, and you're just like, yeah, well, we're full, but we'll do it, and it was just kind of like, I'm not sure if, like, well, you probably realize, but in situations like that, if you could just kind of feel over the telephone the relief that kind of is just overwhelming as a rider when you think everything's just gone to shit and now everything is all right. I mean, that's kind of like, for me, like, I really feel like mechanics are kind of, they're a bit like people who build bike parks, and I don't know, because there's so much work behind it and they're so dedicated, and very often, like, especially with mechanics, you're saving somebody's bacon basically. And then it's like, do you feel you get enough cred for that in a way? Like, I mean,
that's really good to hear. Usually, like, honestly, if we don't hear anything, that's usually a really good sign. That means something didn't go wrong after we tried to fix it. So we take that as a good thing.
Yeah. So what is, I mean, it can't all be, I mean, in a bike shop, there's, I remember with the old bikes and boards that was in Grünerløkka, they had all kinds of funny signs up. And I know Christian Salvesen and Mats Husby used to work there, and a bunch of other guys. And there was definitely some stories, and they had, like, the nightmare customers. But I mean, is it generally like a good place to be? I mean, people pretty all right when they come in?
Oh, for sure. And that's one thing has always kind of drawn me to working at bike shops, and why I've stayed with it so long is it is just environment. So not only the people that you work with, but generally, like, customers just become friends, and, like, it is really chill. And I really do enjoy our customer base, like, for the most part. Like, it's really sick. So that's why also, like, working at Spin was really nice. But you have a lot more just general public in there constantly. So it's not quite as, like, the same. Like, you still have your customers that come in that are super nice and are friendly. But with being more of a mountain bike specific shop, it's like the people you're going to meet on the trails or at Huckfest and then so no, it keeps it going for sure.
And they have to travel to your store more specifically.
Yeah. We're not. I mean, we are right next to the train station. So from Oslo, it's the express train out there, which isn't too bad. But
how is it to get a bike on the train now? Can you be guaranteed to get it on, or is it?
Yeah, for sure. It's been no issue to get a bike on the train. You just have to buy the child's ticket.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, which is the half price one. So it's like 32 kroners from Oslo to Askid, I think.
Yeah. But what shouldn't you do? When you come into the shop, like, you must get some customers. I mean, how do you not be a dick in a bike shop? Like, is there anything that, like, when someone comes in or says or does or whatever, and you just kind of like, all right, just,
So, well, this might be an unpopular opinion against other mechanics, but for me, having a dirty bike is no problem. It means you've ridden your bike, and like I don't often wash my bike super well.
Nice.
So like it doesn't bother me. I don't know, but I know it does. That can get to some people. But if there's gonna be one thing that kind of, I don't know if it's just me or like, yeah, being the dick at the bike shop is like, yes, we understand that you've tried things and it's really good that you've like explained to us what you've tried so we can go on. But if we're going to put your bike in the stand, like don't try and help us do work on your own bike. Like you're kind of there for us to help you out and it only makes us go a little bit slower. Like that's our, yeah.
Have you seen this? It's been on the internet for a while. They've seen a sign with different prices at the car garage. There's one price where we fix it, and then one where we watch, and there's a lot higher price if you help.
Yeah. For the watching part doesn't really bother me so much anymore, but the trying to help part gets a little bit. I know it's like only good intention, so it's not like I'm angry about it, but it's just.
Because your workspace is kind of like, it's behind the till a little bit and then round and back. And so is that kind of like your personal workspace? Like do you like, is that where you like to be on your own and just,
Yeah, so it is definitely nice having that little spot to myself. And we kind of built it not to exclude me from the rest of the shop, but because it's only me and Mika in the shop at any given time. And if the shop's full of customers, and if we're both helping customers, it means that no service is actually getting done. And then we have to do it all after work. Yeah. So Mika kind of handles a lot of the customer stuff. And then at least one of us is constantly trying to get through the workload for the day. Which is why they have that like little sanctioned off place where I can come out if I need to help out, but I also have a place where I can kind of, but it does become a little bit of a vibe back there. I enjoy myself. And for me, just being able to like, that's kind of a happy space, just being able to like enjoy what I'm doing, get super into it and nerd out really hard and listen to music. And
do you get stressed out, or are you just kind of like sort of a constant kind of like, okay, it's just not going to go fast enough because if it does, I might make a mistake, or so it takes the time it takes, or? Yeah,
pretty much. Yeah. Like obviously I'll try and go quicker if I need to, if it's super busy, but I really don't try because doing it twice is always 5 times longer than just taking a little bit extra time and changing the seal that you might not need to change type of stuff.
What's the maximum amount of time you have used to get a wire through some internal things?
Well, are we counting e-bikes? Because those can be a mission. I don't even want to start talking about hours on those ones.
Yeah, that's the thing is I mostly enjoy if I have the time and nobody's bothering me. I enjoy wrenching on my bike a little bit, but sometimes you get stuck on something like you're gonna get like the gear wire through something and it just won't go there. And it just gets angry.
That's why I bought a Madonna. No internal wiring whatsoever.
No, internal gear wiring is not too bad. But the things that really just get me are the fixes that are only supposed to take like 5 minutes. And then something goes drastically wrong and it becomes like 2 hours. And when it's supposed to be easy, but it's not. For some reason, that really gets to me.
You of course have a place to go, but I can stand and lose something like a nut or something onto the grass and never ever find it again. And it's never something that I have. They're so
it's like that.
Not normal.
It'd be either like that little washer that goes between the pedal and the crank, or
and it won't work without it,
or a spacer on the crank, or
that happens no matter how long you do it.
It does.
It just becomes expert level to where like in a lot of the lockout systems they'll have like a little ball bearing compressed by a spring that they don't tell you about. So you just take out a pin and the ball bearing goes this way, and then it's just like some size that isn't made for like 15 years or I don't know.
Do you have that? There's a thing going on Instagram now where they have like that song was like, "Do you remember?" And then, like, have you seen it? And basically, like, there's a lot of them bike-related ones where they take like an axle out, put it down, turn around to do something, go right back, and the axle is just gone. do you experience that as well, where you just like, where the fuck did I put that screw or whatever? Like,
because I do this all day, every day, I have some routines that help me with that kind of stuff. But yeah, it definitely happens.
Because Vidar, explain to me how your board, like your bike shed looks.
It looks like someone squeezes in between. Has a very little time. You just have to drop things where they are to run up and make dinner for kids or stuff.
To me, it looks like if someone had like delivered a big like kind of carton of used bike bits and then exploded it and then just left and then put a really expensive bike in the middle that hasn't been washed since the last time it was used. That's kind of your...
Usually I have a system-ish thing that so I can figure out in which zone based on a category of thing. But sometimes I have to leave a build in the middle, and then I can just put stuff just where it's inside the reach of my hand, you know, on my arm, and then it could go missing for years.
Does that? I mean, have you got like? Are you a bit OCD with stuff like that, or do you just have good routines?
I'm a bit OCD, so like every tool obviously has a place, and if I finish a certain part of a project where I'm going to like start fresh with something else, all the tools go back on the wall before I start the next project.
Oh, top tip.
And just that kind of stuff to try and keep the bench. Like if you look at my bench, it doesn't look clean. So I'm not saying like I am the most like OCD person, but yeah, no, I have some routines that are help prevent that kind of stuff.
And is it the same at home as well?
So no, but it's the same. I don't really have a workspace at home because the workshop, I have full access to the workshop. Yeah. So for me, that's just easy enough to stay late at work. But I am the same way with my toolbox and my tool roll. It's the same thing.
How about the dishwasher machine?
Well, since I don't have one,
okay.
Yeah, I just have to hand wash all that stuff. Right. And it usually goes okay.
How about your sock drawer?
No, that's chaos. No, we can't be organized all over our whole place.
Oh, he's slightly normal. That's good to hear. That's good to hear. So if we get on to, because I know that you've got a bit of, I don't know if it's a hype from Martin or if, but from what I gather, you've got a bit of a suspension guru. You've obviously, like you said earlier, that you work for Star Motor and you had a lot of experience from both motor and bike and what have you. But first of all, like how hard is it with? I mean, Vidar does lower legs service on his fork. That's about as far as you've got, I think, isn't it? I've never tried because I'm lazy.
Very technical.
My shed is too dirty. My theory is that my shed is too dirty to do a suspension lower leg service. So I'm a bit worried because I do tend to drop things on the floor quite a lot. So
I just answer that the lower leg service doesn't need that. You take it into the kitchen and wash the thing, and then you put.
Oh, my wife will love that.
She has to be out of the house.
But I mean, you know, when you get into the depth things, I mean, how hard is it? I mean, are there magic tricks that you or special things? I mean, I'm asking a question about something I know nothing about.
Yeah, and this one's kind of a hard one to ask because to me it doesn't like. Since I do it all day, every day, and there's also a difference. Like when I was doing my master's and working at Spin at the same time, I obviously wasn't wrenching full time, and you just kind of lose certain like small movements that make things easier. So like, but now that I like when you're wrenching 24 or like full time, you just like it's for me it kind of feels easy and straightforward, but it's because I'm looking at all day long. And the first time I usually have tried something, it isn't easy. And also like the service themselves may be easy, but when shit starts going wrong, that's when the experience comes in.
Okay.
So like, yes, the lower leg service can be pretty straightforward, but then you try to punch your dust seal in on a 38 and it's like kind of crooked and you're trying to straighten it out. And then like it becomes a bigger mission than just like just putting the dust seal in. And every time you look at like a YouTube video, or Fox has a huge catalog of like service procedures that's open to anybody to look at. So if you just are obsessive and that's how I learned is if I got a shock in that I didn't know how to do, I just had to do it step by step with the catalog, and you do that enough times and you're going to remember how to do it the next time. But those catalogs and videos are super deceiving. Yeah, those dust seals come out super easy and you press them in, they're always flat, or like you try and undo this one bolt and it's going to come off super smooth and it just doesn't work out that way.
never like that.
No. So, because apparently whatever they do in these like catalogs are like brand new out of the box and not over torqued down and not salted shut or and that's kind of where the experience comes in. So
and in the damper, I never dared to go into the damper thing, but that might be more about being clean and
it's about being clean, but it's also just really tedious. Like you have to be really particular about the damper bleed, because if any air bubbles gets in when you're trying to bleed it, you're going to push your damper through air and not oil, which gives a lot of inconsistency. Right. And so even though it's not complicated, it's kind of like building a wheel. Like if you guys have ever built wheels, or if anyone's built wheels for the first time
ago.
Yeah. If you start over tightening some spokes more than others, by the time you finish, your wheel is going to be oblong.
Yeah.
Like the wheel building's not hard, but you just have to be really particular about the process.
Yeah.
That's what I'm not.
And
But are there some, like, you get some, forks in or whatever, and it's like some mystical problem and there's trial and error, or are you at the stage where once you open up and you start looking, you can just see what the problem is?
for me, it kind of feels like I'm that way, because you also realistically, for a fork company or a suspension company to develop something new, it's far more expensive for them to do something completely different than everybody else, or completely different from last time, or they're just going to do same, but slightly different. So for the most part, like all the forks kind of work the same way and have similar characteristics. So like, as long as you really understand the fundamentals of what's going on, it's easy to kind of understand where the problem is, because you can easily take away that's not your air spring.
Yeah.
That's not a dust seal problem. Or there's a lot of things you can deduce pretty fast, but that's just from seeing so much. So.
Yeah, I was wondering that as he said, I'm doing the lower leg service myself, but I wonder when I need to do a damper service, and I actually went to Gira's webpage earlier this autumn to see, and you had a sort of a guide to how we're gonna feel it. But can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so if you're going to do like a damper service and you have a Fox Float X2, it'll tell you when you need to do a damper service, and it's far more often than everything else. But no, for the most part, if your shock, like you have a normal air port in your shock and your fork where it balances out between the negative and positive air chamber. So if you hear a little bit of noise when you first compress your shock, but only in that spot, then it's probably all right. But if you just hear like a slurping noise throughout the entire shock, what's happening is you have air in the oil. So air and oil are passing through a shim stack, and that's what's making that slurping noise, and that air shouldn't be there. Yeah. So that's a full service.
Yeah, but that's not the same as the breathing noise on the rebound?
No, that's not the same, because and that depends on what oil certain shocks are using and that kind of stuff. So that breathing noise in the rebound is a little bit different, yeah.
Right.
And then with the forks as well, like if you have these new grip 2 dampers or grip dampers, they're extremely reliable, which is why they've changed them to that way. So for the most part, those actually bleed themselves, which is why they use a different weight oil in the lowers, because it kind of purges and sucks in oil. So if you take your lowers off and it's supposed to be kind of like that whitish colored oil, if that comes out black, then the oil in your damper is going to be black. And then it needs to be bled.
Okay.
And then you have certain shocks like the deluxe coil from RockShox. Those ones are really reliable, and they will blow themselves up internally before they ever start making any sucking noise. So a lot of times we'll get into those and the oil is pretty black by the time we get in. So yeah, those ones maybe like once a year on coil shocks is not too bad of an idea, but
yeah. Because when like I was mentioned earlier, when I came in with my rear, I had a Fox X2 rear shock, and it had blown out a seal and lost the air pressure and what have you. And then I remember you mentioned that you'd seen it a few times from new shocks, but then you said once you've done your magic, put your magic fingers on it, then it doesn't happen again. And like I've heard sort of rumors that when you get your fork or your shock from the manufacturers when it's brand new, that it's like not, maybe it's like too finely tuned, or I don't know what, that's, you know, they tend to need a service a bit quicker than when somebody like yourself has given them a service after a while. Is that true? Is that
it can be, just because like when you get like a new fork from the factory, a lot of times like they won't have grease in the dust wipers and that kind of stuff. And it's not necessarily because they need grease in the dust wipers, but they just wear a bit quicker, in my opinion. And I can be a little bit liberal when it comes to grease, just because it keeps things smooth for quite a while. So that's why on the Float X2, those ones, like generally after a service, you won't have as many of those issues because the seals just aren't dry and I don't know.
Right. Can you do that without opening it up? Can you sort of grease the outside and it pour into the rubber, or is it? So
they have, there are some products, like I know they use the silicone spray on the stanchions. I don't know how much that actually does, because those wipers are usually pretty good about wiping stuff off. But there are some oils, like I know that there's some companies making some like lubrication oils, and usually there's like a metal spring on the outside of the seal. So like popping that off and just using a really small zip tie to kind of open up a gap between the stanchion and the seal, and like dripping that oil down in there. They do make those. Those are really just for racing application though. So they wear off after a couple runs. Yeah. So it's just really short time solution. So unfortunately they're like, and they're usually frowned upon, because usually like your everyday customer that wants to do that just doesn't want to do the service. So usually a service will solve those kinds of problems instead of kind of going for these other things. Like that's really just high level racing application if you're trying to look for the extra bit of time on the track. But quick tip, if you do want some like lubrication on the stanchions of your fork and stuff before like you descend, is just turn your bike upside down when you're on top of the trail, because then it'll take all that lubricating oil and actually just put it straight into your foam rings, and you'll actually get a much smoother kind of ride feel for the descent on the way down. So it's a really cheap and easy way to.
Nice.
Yeah, I hear people refer to it as a lower leg service.
Yeah.
Just putting bike upside down.
Until it's completely dry, then it doesn't work out so well.
Yeah. But you, I mean, obviously you do any make, you do, you know, Cane Creek, Olin's, Fox, RockShox, DVO, EXT probably as well, I guess.
Whatever we can get parts for the most part. So we haven't done any EXT yet, but because we haven't really had very much question for EXT.
No, there's not that many of them.
No. So, and it has to make sense for us. Like if we're going to buy a bunch of special tooling, we kind of have to pay for that special tooling.
Yeah. it's for people like me where it's like, well, that rear shot costs 2,000 kroner more. And they're like, oh yeah, well then it's better. I'll buy it. That little niche category of people there. But I mean, when you're going through these different makes, is there any particular make that you're like, oh, that's so much better than that? Or I mean, you said that a lot of the stuff across the makes is similar. Are any of them, or any shocks or forks, are there anything's like a nightmare to work with, or?
I don't really want to I don't want to hang anyone out on this one. Obviously, there's some models that are better than others, brands better than others, but yeah.
Do you know much about the suspension tuning? Do you do that?
Yeah, so I do quite a bit of that as well.
Right, so you know your way around the shim stack.
Yeah. Yeah, shim stack, and also just your general settings and oil weights and that kind of stuff. So there's a few ways to do it.
So what's your like? I shouldn't go any trade secrets, but do you like change oil weights for temperature or for use, or or something like that?
A little, we can for use, not so much for temperature, but we can for use. So yeah.
And when you do like tuning, how does that work? Someone comes in and says they need this, or do you out with them? Or I mean, is it sort of service tuning you do, or do you actually help people set their bikes up?
So I've wanted to do more of like the bike setting up. Like when I've worked with Brage and some of the pros, like we've gone out and actually done proper tuning with them. Or even like Nico Haglev, or like at Huckfest a couple of years ago, I was doing that stuff with them as well. And it's something I've wanted to do more of, but it just comes down to time. Unfortunately, not be able to do that with everybody. So like for the most part, if I'm going to be tuning with people, it's just kind of helping them understand what's going on. Because a lot of times people will show up and be like, I want this better.
That's time consuming, right?
Well, it's not so bad. It's just like you kind of have to know where people are starting, what they want, and then kind of where they want to end up. Because a lot of times people don't need a special tune for their shock. They're just more confused about the settings and they've got something kind of wrong. And like you have products like ShockWiz to help you. But a lot of times people are trying to satisfy that smiley face that ShockWiz gives you, then trying to figure out if it actually feels good or not.
Yeah.
And riding is all personal. I know that the bike industry is trying to keep this a secret, but like it's all preference at the end of the day. So
yeah, we generally disagree with ShockWiz.
Yeah, but still, I feel a little satisfaction if me and ShockWiz agree. So I usually shop around for different profiles until I find something
But that's the thing, is you found something that you feel feels right, and then you're just trying to make the ShockWiz agree with you, and there's a profile that does agree with you.
Exactly.
So like you kind of like
But you said that you've done some stuff for Brage Vestavik.
Yeah.
And Martin tipped me that you've worked on fest series in Poland and Belgium, and you've been to Rampage, and there was like a Red Bull athlete meetup in Wales and stuff. I mean, that's pretty. Was that for specific athletes that were there, or were you like general for a number of people that were?
So it depends on the event. Like, so it all, like the first event I was kind of invited to is through Nico Vink for Fest in Belgium. And that whole arrangement was I was just there as a general mechanic for all the athletes, just to help people out with whatever they needed, or like with people that are like, you have athletes like Remy Morton, who are really particular about bike setup, and like it's fair enough. He doesn't want to trust some random dude that he meets in some country for the first time. Like, that's okay. I also get that. But like having my tools available so he can also, like, if he needs a pipe cutter to cut bars for a fresh build or just do some of that kind of stuff, then at least I have everything available for athletes like that. So I was there just more as a general mechanic, invited through Nico Vink for that one. And then with Wales, I was there for Brage. And then in Fest Series Poland, it was Simon Goldek who kind of invited me for that one to do the same thing that I did at Belgium. It was just more just general for whoever needed help with whatever. And then Rampage I was there with Brage, but I was also wrenching for some of the guys that I had worked out with Fest Series. They just ended up dropping off their bikes, so it just ended up being for a few people.
Happy guy.
Yeah.
Just like in the shop.
Well, I mean, if you're not good enough to ride at these events, find a way to make yourself included and just be stoked on being there.
So cool. But that's really cool. That's a really good mentality to have, I think.
When somebody rides something like Rampage, what do you have to do to the suspension to make it tolerate this kind of abuse?
Just weld it shut.
Honestly, it's not too far off. No, for those ones, we just have to make it as stiff as possible.
Yeah.
So basically, a lot of those guys. Well, it also depends on preference. Like you have different athletes with different preference. Like for at least Brage, his setup for that event was extremely stiff. So we were basically just trying to set up a DH bike with like a slope style bike feel. So just like no sag at all, and then just big impact only, because you don't really have small bump up there.
No.
It's just big impact.
Okay.
And so with the stiffer the suspension, the more pop you can get out of it, and then it just takes those bigger impacts. Where if you would have it slightly too soft, and if you bottom out, that impact feel is going to be way harder than any impact you feel if you feel like a really stiff suspension. So we just had to make it really stiff, and luckily, like we were able to set some shocks up super stiff, and then the Fox guys and Marzocchi guys showed up and were able to help me do a couple of custom tuning small bits for the end there.
Cool.
But what do you have to do anything special to not blow the seals off when they land? Like Brage is like 200, 300 kilos.
Well,
and then it drops like 14 meters or what is it, more? Yeah. And cases it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was
So
like
it's
15 plus. It was ridiculous. that job.
I would believe like any kind of seal would.
No, nothing super special with the seals. I'll personally use like a little bit thicker grease just to help certain seals hold a bit better. Like it doesn't need low friction in some of those things.
Yeah.
So something that helps that way, but nothing special with the seal. I know like World Cup downhill teams, sometimes they'll have custom seals in their shocks, but it's not super common.
And then James blows out his X2 just riding around doing nothing.
Just, it's a little marker thing, and I think it's probably more to do with the amount of watts that I'm putting down.
Yeah, of course.
there's a lot of factors.
Or maybe I'm just shit and I should have got it serviced a long time before it happened.
No, unfortunately the Flood X2 can be a little bit unpredictable. It decides when it wants to.
It decides when.
But after it came into you and you had a bit of a chat with it, but I got rid of the X2. I just couldn't get on with it.
I guess the guy who bought it is very kind to it, I guess.
Yeah. Fuck, what's his name? Oh my God, I'm blank. Vegard, that's it. Vegard Breie. No, not Breie. Vegard.
I know.
Scorpion.
Thank you. Vegard Scorpion, who, he's... I just thought, why...
He broke a steel frame into...
Yeah, I'm just like, why is he buying an air shock? But
because the air shock is good for heavy people, really, I think.
We came up with a couple of tunes for Vegard and a few of the other guys called Chunky Boy tunes.
Okay.
So for the outside the norm usage, we
cool.
Because those who don't know, he rides quite hard and he's not a very small person either.
No, and he usually, like, he's ridden, like, if you go on his Instagram page, he rides, he's been to Harfjell and Drammen and everything, and he rides like a hardtail on everything.
Yeah.
And really, really, really well. Like, you know, he just smokes like everyone on it. It's ridiculous.
Seeing some of the stuff he does on bikes is, it gets you super stoked to ride your own bike. He is a lot of fun to ride with and just a nice guy all around. So, yeah.
And he's like,
awesome.
Without, I'm not dissing him, but if you meet him, because I met him a couple of times and I met him also before I knew how good he was at riding. And there's certain people that you meet and you just look at them, you look at their bike and the way they're, and they just everything about them is like, this guy's shit hot, and I'm not saying Vegard didn't look like he was shit hot, but I just never expected him to be anywhere near as good as he is on a bike. He just looked like another guy on a bike who was a bit of a weekend warrior. And then you see him riding and then you see his Instagram and it's just like, oh my God, this guy is just ridiculous.
That's what I aspire to be, as a person that doesn't look like it, but will surprise you. Right now, unfortunately, I definitely look like the shit hot character that's just like so disappointing. At the end, it's just like, oh, okay. Yeah.
We're all there.
Yeah.
We're all there.
Yeah, but you don't have a monster logo on your helmet.
That gives expectations.
The struggle is real.
When I ride snowboard, I have different jackets for different parts of the season. So I have one with less colors on for the beginning of the season where I'm shit. And there's some, should I dare to go to the next jacket now? Or because the people sitting on the lift, they expect something.
Yeah.
You can't be shit on the jumps if you have a strong.
And it's like
cold.
never wear camo.
No.
I made the mistake. All my snow kit is snow camo.
Yeah.
Full winter, and and
you
does
have
me
to
no
go
favors.
900 at least.
Yeah, 900 to faceplant. Yeah,
Yeah, that's okay. I think people can expect a little slamming.
yeah.
Yes.
But I mean, have you as a bike rider? Back to being a mechanic, and like I said earlier, like typical with like a cook, for example, who makes his fantastic food, goes home and just eats frozen pizza. Like, how do you look after your own bike? Are you good at looking after your own bike?
I am, like, my bike definitely runs. No, I am pretty good at doing my own bike, and I also get a bit picky with my own bike as well. Like, I didn't think I was picky until I started telling somebody about my preferences. I'm like, okay, no, I am quite specific about how I like things. But if something's not working, it doesn't bother me because I know what's wrong.
Yeah.
So, like, if my derailleur's only 10 out of 12 gears, and I know why, it just doesn't get to me. So, like, I'll have some quirks about my bike every once in a while, like that kind of stuff. Or my bike's definitely not the most silent. So if my bottom bracket creaks, but there's no slack, it's all right for me. So, yeah, I think a lot of those times too, when bikes are making noise and stuff and people don't understand why, that's why it bothers them so much, is because they feel like something's going to go catastrophically wrong with their bike.
Right.
When realistically, it's probably something a bit small. And you should have it checked it out. I'm not saying, like, if your bike's doing a bunch of weird stuff, like, don't do it. But, like, for me, because I know what's going on.
Like, but return customers earn more money, though.
Yeah, but angry return customers.
That's not good.
Not
for
so
anyone.
much, no.
I just digress a little bit. But just get back to Brage a little bit about his bike setup. Because you're saying he has like really super hard suspension setup, obviously because of the terrain and stuff. But is there anything else that is kind of very Brage with the way he sets up his bike?
Brakes for sure.
Yeah,
The brakes are really specific. Just like we do not ride our brakes the same way at all. So because he's a lot of muscle, and when he he pulls brakes, he puts a lot of power on them. So his brake levers are usually really far away from the bar and have zero modulation. So if you just touch that thing, it locks the brake up.
wow.
But there's also not many people doing those kinds of drops and those kinds of features with that amount of just pure force. So you can't expect it to be set up the same way as like what would be considered regular for everybody else.
What brakes does he run?
Now he's running the Saints.
Saints, yeah. Oh, yeah. They're the ones that I thought were shit, but it was my fault. Because it was reverb oil dripping on the brakes.
Yeah, that'll do it. Yeah, for
So
sure.
I sold them.
But did the reverb oil drip on the new brakes, or?
Well, that was the thing. When I was changing to the new brakes, that was when I realised that there was reverb oil dripping.
Gotcha.
So that was like, oh, you twat. And what other parts? Wearing like wheels and let's talk about Brage. He's amazing.
Now his componentry group set is super solid. So he's actually on one of like the most reliable bikes he's ever been on with like the DT wheels. Because we built up some wheels for him, just DT hubs and DT rims and stuff like that. And he doesn't go nearly through as many wheels as he used to.
Yeah.
And then also now he switched to Marzocchi. It is a little bit less sensitive on like the racing tuning platform when you get into low and high speed compression and that kind of stuff. But it's unreal reliable. That stuff just works and works and works.
Really?
And it's probably the best shock for the money. Like, yes, it's not going to be the most sensitive and give the best like mid-stroke support compared to something like Olin's.
Yeah.
But when you're paying about half the price, like for what it does do, it does really, really well.
Do you think they're a bit underrated, really? I mean, is there a bit of snobbery with like everyone's like, oh, I've got to have Fox Factory, I've got to have.
I think it's really funny. Like now that Marzocchi has really come full on with their whole free ride line, having Brage and the whole like team, I feel like there's a lot of hype around Marzocchi.
Yeah.
Like if you have a Marzocchi build now, people seem to be just more stoked about it. Like if you had entry level, like because the Marzocchi fork is really close to like the Fox Rhythm, you're going to get more resale value out of your bike with a Marzocchi fork than you will with the Fox Rhythm.
Really?
Even though a lot of the internals are the same, they still use grip damper. Like the air spring is really similar, that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of hype around Marzocchi, and their new air shock is built like their air shock is the first shock that they've developed themselves. Like all their other stuff is kind of like Fox trickle down. So their air shock was launched as like a first Marzocchi ground up build since like the old bombers and that kind of stuff. It definitely shares some stuff with the Fox shock, but at the same time, that shock is crazy reliable. Like I remember we got one of the prototypes in for Brage and it just didn't ever blow up. And when we were rebuilding float X2s like constantly, that was a nice change.
Yeah.
So as far as setup goes, he's on like a really solid bike now.
Cool.
Yeah, man, and it seemed from the marketing that it was actually sort of built for free ride.
Yeah.
Shock, yeah.
I mean, Brages does have some special tuning and stuff in there to make it extra stiff.
Okay.
But I know riders like Tyler McCall, he's riding just like the over-the-counter version.
Yeah.
He doesn't like his shocks as stiff as Brage, and he's a much lighter rider. But same thing, just works.
Yeah.
So stoked on that one.
Nice.
Do you think that a lot of people who ride in Norway, you know, weekend warriors like ourselves, basically overbiked? I mean, it's, you know, again, it's like, oh, I've got to have Fox 38. If I don't have Fox 38, I'll die, you know. But then, like, you know, you see like Brandon Semnick riding on a single crown at Rampage. And I think that also, like, I mean, I'm also a little bit interested in like what your opinion of that is. Like, you know, do you think that's a sketchy thing to do, or is that just says a lot about how far the development of shocks has come?
Well, it says a little bit about how far the development of shocks has come, but it also shows a lot about how far riding has come. Because yes, in theory, you can take any short travel bike and just shred Hoffiel all day long with it, but it takes a really good rider to do that on their best day. The better shocks and stuff you have, the more forgiving it's going to be. So it is a bit of a balance. Yes, you may not be riding that fork to its potential, but it's taking you further in your own potential, if that makes sense. So if you view it that way, like, yes, you're buying more gear and you're not necessarily going to push the gear to its limits, but it may give you may be able to allow you to ride some harder stuff that you wouldn't normally be able to, or have an extremely good day on the bike that maybe wasn't as, like, have gotten you close to some sketchy shit that you're able to get out of, where if you had something cheaper, it may have not gotten you out of it, which just creates for a good story later, a good beer and some high fives. So I don't think over biking or like having you can't really over bike in that sense. So it's just all in how you look at it.
Yeah.
I do think there is not a miscommunication, but like when you buy Fox factory Float X2s and DHX2s and some of those things, like you do have to realize those are made for top of the line racers and they crave service. Like when they work, they are undoubtedly the best. But the people that they're made for are also getting their stuff serviced constantly.
Okay.
So you can't buy a Float X2 expecting it to last as long as the cheaper model. Because the cheapest model was kind of meant for your everyday rider.
Are they more reliable then? Is that what you're saying?
Not the Float X2s, but like some of the cheaper shocks. So like if you like the DPX2, some of those ones. So yeah, and that's a bit of I think an unfortunate miscommunication is you get people that come in and be like, I bought this bike for like 100,000 kroners and it has the nicest suspension and it's only been 8 months and I've ridden every single day and it has like it's already blown up.
Oh, that's pretty interesting. I never thought about that. That's pretty cool. But I mean, back to your riding, you had a situation this year. Mm-hmm. No, was it this year? Yeah.
Well, I had one last year and then this year, so I've kind of had a solid couple of years.
Well, let's start at the beginning. What happened last year? Were you overbiked?
I mean, I was definitely overbiked. My bike was definitely a better rider than I was. That's for sure. A little bit too much confidence it was the opening weekend of the Drammen Bike Park, or opening weekend of their big jump line at the Drammen Bike Park.
Right.
And I was feeling overly confident based on how good my bike was and didn't really talk to anybody about the jumps or watch anybody hit them. I just decided like, yeah, I got this and just went way too fast and went over the bars and ended up breaking collarbone, punctured lung, and a bunch of ribs.
Oh, shit.
So that was a good...
Punctured lung sounds bad.
That one was the puncturing of the lung, I guess, or I didn't really notice. It just felt like you got the wind knocked out of you.
Okay.
But when they weren't, emergency surgery at the hospital.
Yeah.
And then the weirdest part about it is when you leave the hospital and they take because they basically do put a huge tube in your side to allow for airflow. So you don't notice after the surgery at all. But when they take it out, your lung kind of collapses a little bit again.
Boy.
And so for the first couple of days, it feels like you're blowing up a completely empty balloon, and you can feel the top of your lung kind of separate the walls. So that one was a bit of a gnarly one for sure.
Yeah, because I remember that jump suddenly got a lot steeper, they're jumping jumps.
Yeah, which is why I will definitely take responsibility for that one, because if I had talked to anybody or just followed someone in that had done it,
right,
probably would have avoided a huge mistake, but
yeah,
it didn't happen.
But they did reshape the jumps a little bit. I don't know
they shaped it again differently this year, and then they reshaped it halfway.
Yeah. And then you had a situation this year where you definitely weren't overbiked.
No. The whole point of the race was not being overbiked. Yeah. So clunker race
at Høkkefest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
then that the bike collapsed. Was that the thing?
Well, because I actually don't remember the incident at all. My memory is completely black for about an hour leading up to the crash itself. So I've only heard after the story, but. Essentially, we were blind racing a new course, and there was it was down the ski field with wet grass, and then there was a little water drainage ditch, and being Høkkefest and being a bit too competitive with a few of the competitors and just having a generally good time, and also winning last year, I had to really maintain my title.
I see that.
Just way too much speed, and then I hit that little drainage ditch, my front wheel being a clunker race. And for anyone who doesn't know what clunker races is, it's just old, shitty bikes.
Okay, so it wasn't like an old frame with modern parts.
No, it was...
It's a piece of shit.
It was all the way around.
Yeah.
Original parts all the way around.
Oh, man.
But the front wheel just collapsed. And then I guess, because there was only one other person that saw it, because a big, really important detail in the story is I was leading the race.
Go out.
Worth it.
Win or die.
But Ski Martin, Martin Vendick, was one of the few people that actually saw it, because he was racing behind me. But he said that the speed that we were going was quite it was proper, and so when the front wheel collapsed, it was just face straight into ground.
Terrible.
You had a full face?
No, so that one wasn't full face. But I actually had one of the nicer helmets in the race. If you look at some of the other competitors, one of them had an army helmet on.
Oh my God.
I luckily had the nicer Fox regular trail helmet on. And I feel like it did its job for what it could have done, not being a full face, because I walked away with no concussion or anything at all that way.
Wow.
So the helmet definitely did a solid job, but not covering the face, definitely.
Yeah, because what happened to your face? You broke a lot of stuff?
I broke my jaw in a few places and basically collapsed the whole right side of my face.
Wow.
So they had to do reconstructive surgery. The whole right cheek was a bit sunken in.
Oh,
so that's why there's a lot of titanium, and so I'm just reinforced all the way around.
It's a good selling point for full face helmets.
Oh, for sure, yeah. And I heard that right after the crash, Hafjell went and instantly made the Retro Cup modern gear only.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it had apparently an immediate impact.
That's another first. It's another first.
Yeah. or a last.
Yeah.
Crash with that.
Not one that you're not a first you really want to go for.
You don't want to be proud of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because you've got, we'll put some pictures out, but because you've definitely got a Sam Pilgrim thing going on with the tooth missing at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, are you gonna be like Sam Pilgrim? You're just gonna leave the tooth missing, or?
No, luckily because the tooth is fine wherever it is. It's not a dental thing. The hospital said that they would take care of the tooth at the hospital because it's kind of associated with the crash.
Right.
So it'll be the same surgeons that did the rest of my face.
Wow.
And they said they have time in February, so I just said yes. And yeah, I'll look more normal again in February.
Shit.
But
yeah. And how are you at getting back after something like that's happened?
I think I got extremely lucky not remembering anything. Because obviously, like, not remembering leading up to the crash, I don't remember how fast or like the moment of impact or like all the kind of like trauma that goes into that section. I don't remember like all the after part with like the helicopter flight and medical just kind of like being all over you and doing all the really painful stuff. So I feel like I escaped a ton of trauma. Yeah. Actually. So not too... Like, for me, I felt really bad because it was worse for everyone else involved. Like, for Martin and Per Arndt and those guys who had to roll up on me bloodied in a field and have to deal with that. Yeah. It was way harder on them than it was for me. So, I owe those guys a ton.
Cool. Nice.
Good thing it went relatively well. It seemed bad at the time.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, it could have been so much worse. So I honestly also haven't felt anything bad at all because it could be so much worse. Like only 6 weeks with eating soups and having to get new teeth in February. That's
Hope you like
soup. Feel grateful. Yeah. No, I actually don't like soup. And I definitely don't like soup after that.
You'd switch to porridge?
Too thick. Yeah, there's a lot of things you learn pretty quick.
Right.
All right, so we're getting to towards the end of the podcast now. We've been, man, I feel like I could just like chat about suspension set for hours. But what is your favorite kind of riding? What do you? Is it trail riding or long riding or?
That's kind of a mixed bag, I guess. Yeah. For me, though, just general trail riding is what I ended up liking the most. Like in Utah, at least, that was a big difference between Utah and here. Like first riding there was a bit easier entry into it because everything's more flow trail. So like three-seed, but quite a bit more technical and like a bit faster speed and that kind of stuff. And I really enjoy that kind of stuff. Yeah. And then just if you can get on those kinds of rides with some good friends, then that's definitely my favorite. Yeah.
Because I was going to ask, like, what if it's a question I quite like to ask sometimes is like, if you had like a day riding in a specific place on a specific bike with a specific personal crew or whatever, what would be your dream bike day?
A dream bike day, I think it'd have to be in New Zealand.
Wow.
Just because it's like so high on the bucket list places to go, a lot of like good high speed, just fun trail. And if I had to ride with any, like, I'm kind of torn between like, I'd love to go riding with Martin Soderstrom. That would be really dope because he was one of the people that I watched videos of. That's why I bought a dirt jumper when I first started riding bikes, is because I watched him and Danny McCaskill ride. I'm like, yes, that's it. I need that. Or just the Van Zacks. Those guys look like a lot of fun to ride with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. New Zealand, that's a good one.
Yeah, I haven't really thought about it. I know some people go there to ride in the winter because it's on the other side of the globe, but this is really, really nice, probably.
I've had some friends go ride there and they've only had amazing things to say, so really keen on that.
Cool. We heard a rumor that you're quite good at playing the didgeridoo.
That I can, yeah.
But that would be Australia, not New Zealand.
Yeah, that'd be Australia. No, that was I learned that way before biking.
But you don't ever like go on bike rides and have your didgeridoo strapped to your frame and then go and sit out somewhere and just play it to nature?
No, I've generally kept those things separate. But, never say never. I guess if anyone just wanders on me in the woods doing that, I guess it's me giving it a shot.
I'm just planting the seed. Planting the seed.
Yeah, there's no way of like sneaking that one into like a bike trip either. It's like that's going to be noticed pretty fast. You're like, no, let me grab my didge.
Yeah, that's not like something that One Up would make a tool that goes in the stem or something.
I'm sure we can find a mount for it. That'd be no worries.
Cool. Well, it's been great to talk to you, Gavin. And unfortunately for you, there is nobody who is allowed to come into the OTBpodden without going into what we call a skriftestolen, which would be like the confession box. So I'm kind of guessing, as a bike mechanic and you've been riding for a long time, you've got maybe one or two bike sins that you wish to cleanse your soul with us. So I'll just let you in here now. It's got a bit of a holy vibe going on here. No didgeridoos, I'm afraid.
That was the only way I was going to confess. So, can I get an example of a bike sin? Like, what are we?
I don't know. I mean, have you used like bar ends at some point, or maybe you've forgotten to tighten up a front wheel when you've done a repair on a bike or something. Or...
I once did try and put a dropper post on a downhill bike.
Ooh. Yeah. It sounds like fun though.
Yeah. No, it was
but it's probably a bad sin.
It was on the very early days of when I first started riding. I just wanted a free ride pedal bike.
Right.
And that was realized really fast that seat angles on downhill bikes are not at all friendly with downhill bikes.
Yeah, how does that work when you have this sort of the angle of the seat going quite
straight back?
Yeah,
no, it doesn't.
But I heard a rumor you do a bit of running as well.
Yeah, I think that's my biggest sin.
He's trying to hide it from us, but it's just not working.
Just want to come with.
Yeah.
Confess.
And are you training for a marathon at the moment? Somebody told me.
No. I did a half marathon the same week I went to Huckfest and broke myself. Oh. So I've kind of made it a personal goal to do another one before my birthday. So yeah.
I don't know. Prioritizing running instead of mountain biking, Vida. That's pretty rough. And having a dropper post on a downhill bike.
Yeah, what kind of punishments will cleanse this? 20 Ave Marias with a good start. But
yeah,
running with mountain bike shoes. I guess
shouldn't running is my running being public knowledge be punishment enough here?
I don't know. I think there has to be a little bit of humiliation as well. So I'm kind of thinking like a pair of like white gyro. Road biking shoes, and you have to run like a 10k with those or something.
That would be brutal. That'd be more than humiliating.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a worthy.
I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. But you have a lot of redemption already with fixing all these nightmare customers' bikes, people who come in way too late, don't look after them, don't use oil, don't wash them when they get back. So I'm kind of going to let you off lightly there.
And I do ride trail bike as well.
And you do ride a trail bike as well. Yeah, hopefully with the didgeridoo soon.
Yeah, we'll see. Maybe at Huckfest next year.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, it's been great to have you, Gavin.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
And just like... Yeah, I just can't say enough. Like, unsung heroes of the bike world, the mechanics. Definitely a group of people who mean a lot to people who like us who ride and save our asses again and again. So thanks a lot for coming in and thanks for fixing our bikes.
Of course, anytime.
And keep riding and keep it rubber side down.
I'll try.
All right.
And running.
Yeah. Cheers, Gavin.